We're starting today's tour at Westminster Station, which doesn't look very spectacular when you look at it in this direction. However, as you come out of the station, this is the first thing that you see. We just take a walk along to the waterfront. So these are the Houses of Parliament. It's actually called Westminster Palace. So it's an old palace building that has been around since the 11th century. So lots and lots of kings lived there, and the MPs at the time used to meet with the king, and so it became the centre where the MPs went to, and now it's called the Houses of Parliament. Now, when you look at the building, you might think that it doesn't look like it's from the 11th century, and the reason for that is that the original structure burnt down, and this one was rebuilt in the Victorian era, so it's more like a 19th century building. But still pretty impressive and still very ornate. I'm just going to cross over the road so that we can get a view from the river and also have a look at the view from the River Thames. So I'll just cross over the road here quickly. If you're coming to London, this is one of the best stations to come to because there's so many different landmarks and sights to see for free when you walk out of the station here. So if I just walk over to the riverside, you can see there's a huge statue of Boudica, formerly known as Boadicea when I was at school, but called Boudica these days. And we just have a little look at the vantage point here for the river. Got a great view of the London Eye, which was installed in 1999 as a temporary 6-month arrangement, and is still here now, many decades later. I think it'll be permanent. You can see lots of different bridges. The city is in the distance. Some boats on the river today. Quite a few tourists on Westminster Bridge, which is what this one is. So we cross back over. We can have a look at the Houses of Parliament from the other side. They have a handy countdown clock these days on all of the crossings in London, so you know exactly when it's going to turn on red. Also got bike lanes now. If you want to ride a bike around London, you can do it a bit more safely than you used to be able to. Let's have a look at this side of the water. You get a better view of the Houses of Parliament here. So we can see there is a terrace. Only the MPs are allowed on that terrace. Great view of the building, nice view of the water. Now, here's a question. What's that called? And most people would call that Big Ben. The Big Ben's actually the bell inside, and it was renamed as the Elizabeth Tower in 2012 to commemorate the Queen's, was it platinum? 75 years on the throne, something like that. I can't remember exactly. So that's the Elizabeth Tower with Big Ben inside it. And that clock is super accurate. So if you want to set your time when you're in London, use that clock. So we're now going to have a walk through to Parliament Square, which is, there's a lot of statues on the square. And today's video, we're going to take in the most important church in the Church of England, which is Westminster Abbey, very close to here. And we're going to take a walk up to Westminster Cathedral, which is actually the head of the Catholic Church in England. Lesser known than Westminster Abbey, but just as important if you're a Catholic. And it's quite an interesting building as well, so that will be the end of today's walking tour. Not too far from here. Hopefully it will only take us 25 or 30 minutes, something like that. So coming around to the other side of the Houses of Parliament here, you can get quite a good view. This is where the road is, where you get brought in if you're a dignitary, if you're coming to visit the Houses of Parliament and you're important, then you'll go in there. I've never been in that way. So if you're coming to London, I'd encourage you to walk around. It's very safe, you won't have any problems, and you get to see a lot of the architecture, a lot of the buildings, and come across things that you might not expect. So hopefully we'll come across a few of those today. Hopefully no tourists will bump into us. So we're coming through to Parliament Square here, and Westminster Abbey is just on the other side of the square. And Parliament Square is quite famous. So let's have a look at the Houses of Parliament from this side, get a good view of it all, whilst waiting for the lights to change. High levels of security these days, obviously. But yeah, really, really nice building. And that's where the MPs for the UK sit, and there's, I think there's something like 650 MPs for all the different districts in England and Wales and Scotland, and they all meet, and Northern Ireland, of course, and they all meet regularly to decide upon all of the laws in the UK. Let's see if we can get across this road. There we go, the Green Man is now on. Have a quick walk around Parliament Square. Pretty busy today. Lots of tourists in town. There's lots of statues on Parliament Square. Best one, Winston Churchill, one of the most famous British Prime Ministers in charge during World War II. Got a nice square here. There used to be a lot of protests going on here. There were some permanent people camping here, but they've been removed, so not anymore. David Lloyd George, another famous British Prime Minister. Christian Smuts, a bit older, 1870. Viscount Palmerston. Who's this one over here? Let's see if we can see who that one is. Derby. And then we've got one of the suffragettes, who's famous for getting the votes, Millicent Garrett Fawcett, for women. Gandhi. So you can hear Big Ben chiming for 11 o'clock. There we go, there's the chimes, there'll be 11 of them. Nelson Mandela here. And directly in front of us now is Westminster Abbey. Now, Westminster Abbey has an interesting history because this is, it was built, there's various numbers, but 1065 seems to be a number that a lot of people refer back to for when Westminster Abbey was built and constructed. It didn't quite look like it does today then. And it became famous in 1066 following the Battle of Hastings. Now, the Battle of Hastings was when King Harold of England was defeated by William the Conqueror, who, by definition, conquered England. And then, following that battle, which was in October of 1066, William the Conqueror crowned himself King of England, so he became King William in 1066 on Christmas Day of that year. And since that time, the vast majority of monarchs in England have been crowned here at Westminster Abbey. So, a very famous church. Also held the funeral of Princess Diana, which was a very sad day for a lot of people. Now, interestingly, when this church first started, it was a Catholic church because England used to be Catholic. In fact, it was Catholic for a very long time until Henry VIII took over as the king. Now, he wanted to get a divorce from one of his wives, Catherine of Aragon, because she hadn't given him a male heir. And he asked the Pope for permission, and the Pope said no. He was not agreeing to Henry VIII getting a divorce. And so, rather than taking that and just getting on with it, Henry VIII decided he was going to set up a competing organisation called the Church of England, which he did. And basically, Catholicism was ruled to be something not in favour by the monarch at that time. So all the churches were converted to Church of England. And if you were Catholic, you couldn't do certain things like you couldn't become an MP, you couldn't get certain jobs, you were basically downtrodden. So it became a bit of a hidden religion, and many people had to worship in private because there were no masses, because all of these churches, including this one, Westminster Abbey, became Church of England. And that continued till the mid-1800s when the rules changed and Catholicism was allowed again, and you could get jobs and all of those sort of things. So that's why a lot of the churches in the UK that are Catholic date back to the Victorian era rather than older than that, because prior to that, all the Catholic churches were basically converted to Church of England. So, yeah, interesting history, and get a really interesting view of the front of Westminster Abbey here. This is where all the ceremonial stuff will go on. When you see, if somebody was when King Charles III was crowned, he would have come here and into this courtyard area. It's really quite a nice spot. Lots of really interesting buildings here, including this one, which looks really quite impressive. It's in very good condition. So very popular with tourists. Lots of photo opportunities here. And you have to pay to go into Westminster Abbey. It's about £31. However, the small hack on that is that you can go to church there. So they still practice church. So you can go in as long as you're respectful. You're not allowed to video and take photos, but you can. I'll just pop into Dean's Yard, have a little walk in here. It's a cafe, Westminster Abbey cafe in here, but just thought I'd have a quick walk in here. See what we think of these buildings. Lots of really old, impressive structures here. I think this place is a nice place to come to on a day like this when the sun's shining. Have a little walk around Dean's Yard.
His is the best.
As I said, some of these buildings for Westminster Abbey are ancient. They date back to the 11th century. So you can see the older parts. Some of them have actually survived. There was a fire at Palace of Westminster, but this part here, very old. Lots of people going in, having a look at that. Yeah, quite an impressive structure. Let's have a quick walk up here. And these kids are all coming out from school. Look at this doorway. Wow, it's ancient. I mean, that's proper. Wow, look how old that is. There's people actually living here. Incredible. This is Westminster School through there. That's where all the kids are coming from. It's quite a difficult school to get into. High academics, also quite expensive. Part of Westminster Abbey. So we'll wander back round to the place we came into, Dean's Yard, and head down towards Westminster Cathedral. So the cathedral is the head of the Catholic Church. So it was actually opened in 1903. So quite a lot later than Westminster Abbey. But that was because of the restrictions that were imposed by Henry VIII. So Catholic churches were not allowed until the change in the laws. I think it was about 1830s, 1840s. They allowed them to start building churches again. So many of the churches in England that are Catholic are a maximum of 200 years old. That's why there's quite a lot of modern Catholic churches in Britain. When you go to a Catholic church, you might find some of them were built as recently as the 1970s, 1980s, because there was still demand. So Westminster School, a lot of different buildings along here. Very central location. So out we come back into the area where the kings of England would come to be crowned. We're now going towards Victoria to head to see Westminster Cathedral. Now, when you come to London, you probably didn't think that there was a Westminster Cathedral. Many people confuse Westminster Abbey with Westminster Cathedral, think that it's the same thing. It isn't, and it looks very different. So we're going to take a walk along Victoria Street, which is this road, which takes us down to Victoria Station, but more importantly, to Westminster Cathedral. So I've got London Bus here. That one is not all electric. You can hear the difference, very noisy. The old diesel versions. Have a look back towards where it's going. Very nice. So this is a great place to come to in London if you want to do some walking, sightseeing. Stick to the river is always a good plan. You'll see lots of things along the river. But we're heading down to Westminster Cathedral, so that's why I'm taking you in this direction today. Always lots of construction going on in London. All the time, everywhere you go. So that building there has got lots of demolition things in the window, so I don't know whether it's about to be demolished or what they're doing. And obviously on along here is a hoarding with a huge site, lots of construction going on within it. That's interesting because a lot of these buildings look very modern, so we've come from basically an 11th century structure and the Houses of Parliament to effectively being in the middle of a very modern city with lots of high-rise buildings around it. But interestingly, Westminster Cathedral is tucked away within all of this setting. Line bikes very popular in London these days. If you're wanting to do a bit of cycling, makes it so much easy. Just download the app and you're off and running. You just start cycling. And a lot of London roads do have cycle lanes, so it's a lot safer than it used to be. You've still got to be very careful. So this is technically a cycle lane in front of me here, but you can see cars are actually just driving within it. Starbucks, available virtually everywhere now in London. I'm starting to come into some food areas, coming into the boundaries of Victoria Station now. Victoria Station's one of the big commuter stations in London. Lots of people come in from the south coast and other parts of the country. So in the morning, very, very busy. Itsu, super popular. Everybody loves a bit of sushi these days, that's a big one. Not the cheapest, but convenient. We're getting closer to Westminster Cathedral. Should be there shortly. Now, as you come along most London roads, you'll find lots of pubs. And this one here, the Albert, is particularly attractive, looks really good. Very nicely done. If you want a traditional old English pub, then that's probably the place to go to around here. Very nice. I'm gonna have to cross over because they've closed this footpath for all of the roads. We'll just have to run a little bit to avoid getting run over. So just a few minutes now until we get to Westminster Cathedral. So you can see why it's not as well known in terms of the tourist locations, because it's a bit more difficult to find. You need to know where you're going. It's very close to Victoria Station, so if you do want to go, if you're interested in visiting it, then I'd recommend taking the tube to Victoria Station, and then you can just get there pretty quickly. I've walked up from Westminster Station today. It's a bit further to walk, but I have seen some great sights. Got about 5 minutes to go before we get there, maybe 4 minutes. And it's on the left-hand side, and it's behind. You can see these really modern buildings here. And this cathedral that was built in 1903, was opened in 1903, is sitting behind there. You would never know. You would just think this is a brand new modern street with lots of recent buildings on it. But it is a hidden gem behind this modern facade. Joe and the Juice, very popular. Very, very expensive though. If you want a smoothie, you can go there and it will cost you an arm and a leg. Okay, we got our first glimpse here of Westminster Cathedral. So you can see that it's set back from all of the new build developments. And you would never know it was here unless you were hunting it out. But it does have a very big bell tower, very big. This is quite a striking piece of architecture. So I said it was opened in 1903. It took around about 8 years to construct. Back in those days, it was a bit more difficult to build buildings of this nature. We'll just walk through to the main aspect. We'll get a better view. Here we go. This is Westminster Cathedral. So if you're Catholic in England, then this is the place where the guy who's in charge of England Catholicism lives here. So it's the Archbishop of Westminster is here. This is where he sits. He's actually a cardinal these days, so he's one of the senior guys in the Catholic Church, and that means that when they have a new pope, when they vote for a new pope, he's involved in those votes. So in theory, he could actually become the next Pope of England. Now we'll see if we can go inside. Hopefully we can. He could become the next Pope of England, but there hasn't been, and there's only actually been one Pope that was English, and he was Pope Adrian, and that was back in, I think it was 1054. So yeah, you can see it's really quite impressive structure, and you can go inside. The ceiling in here is absolutely huge, really, really high, massive. And this is obviously still a working church, so people praying. So that's the conclusion of our walking tour for today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. You've enjoyed coming to Westminster Cathedral, hearing that there's actually a cathedral as well as an abbey. So we've got St. John Southworth here. His actual body seems to be laid out. You can light a candle. And we've got the altar at the top. So that's the conclusion of today's tour. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you did, then please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you again on the next walking tour.